Julian King, man. Julian, my apologies for not knowing this. Is that the government name or is that like an alias? Because I love Julian King. It rolls off the tongue super easy,
No,
but
that's
it's
my name. My name is Julian.
the King part though. Do we add on the King part?
We add on the King part.
Please just that backstory for the added essence of King, man. I love it. It's something that you can easily remember, but
Right.
to just talk about it.
So the idea behind King was to just put my name amongst the greats. It was actually an idea from a team that I worked with years ago that kind of just stuck. When I was my family is pretty well known in the city, and I wanted to be able to step outside of my religious affiliation with my family as to who Julian was as an artist. When I think about people with the last name King, I think of Martin Luther King, someone who has pioneered his way through civil rights and has really become like a icon towards the Black community. So if I can do just a fraction of what he did within music and within my gift, I'm a happy camper.
No, definitely. And was it always, of course, it's always been Julian, but to add on King, or did you ever play around with other aliases? I'm always kind of like dumbfounded and blown away at some of like artists, prior aliases. I think Kendrick had a bunch of different ones, man. It was like Kung Fu Kenny and all these different things, and not even that. I think he has one or two different aliases. But was it always Julian and then the King came, or did you play around with some different aliases?
Oh, I'm honest to God, it's a one and done. It was always Julian King.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Now, I know you referenced the city and the background, but for people who aren't the most familiar with you, man, talk about that Philadelphia background, man. A lot of artists come out of Philly that really take pride in it, especially in the hip hop world. You got Meek Mill that always claims to be king of Philly and things like that, man. No relation to Julian King, right? But nonetheless, definitely just talk about the Philadelphia background, man. Is that something you really hone in on and embrace that, Philadelphia roots? What up, though?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I went to the same high school as Boyz II Men, Questlove, Jasmine Sullivan. So I hold my Philly pride up pretty high. I know that there's a rich cultural legacy that came before me, so that kind of weighs on me, and I believe that it influences my music. I actually ironically live at the same corner that Meek Mill did before he became famous, which is pretty cool to say the least. But I love my city, and it's been interesting over this past 2 years, specifically honing in on a sound and a project that allowed people to understand that I was from the streets of Philadelphia, but also from the Julian King point of view. There was a time where we had music and Vivian Green and Jill Scott and the neo soul era, Jaguar Wright, and they were going hard.
Yep.
We kind of got into this rap world with Meek and Tierra Whack, and now there's Julian King, and I'm hoping to be able to add my name amongst the greats.
Absolutely, and I know you get this in everything interview, man, and I don't think I can add a crazy twist to it, but we got to just talk about those influences early on, man. You referenced some dope, legendary artists. You have Jasmine Sullivan, of course, the roots being out of Philadelphia, man, and things like that. So definitely just talk about out of Philadelphia. Did you really keep it to like those local musical legends, or have you just been like a fan of the genre of R&B and soulful music?
I mean, it's interesting. When I first started coming up in music, Philly was still kind of very R&B neo soul. I have the capability to participate in, but that's not really where I feel like my ground is. I feel like my ground is really in R&B, next gen R&B crossover music. My influences range from Karen Clark Sheard and Kiara Sheard in the gospel world to Coldplay and to Jasmine Sullivan, to Kevin Michael, to Bob Marley. And I'm grateful that I not only was able to use my Philly influence, but I was also able to pull from other places because I feel like it makes me just a little bit more relatable. One thing I love about neo soul is it's very Philly and we have that niche here. But I love music and I love people, and music and people are more than Philly. So I'm grateful that I was able to, just step out a little bit and try new things.
I gotta ask you as well, Julian, where does the fashion sense come from, man? Because even if we're looking at a record like Can We Go Back and things like that, man, or even going back to some of the earlier music that you put out, I've always felt like there's a fashion sense that just kind of rest there with the music as well. So of course you got this heartfelt music that hits hard, but when people look at you, man, there's always fashion statements, or at least in my opinion, always fashion statements being made, and it's just very like I hear the music and then I see you, Julian. I'm like, oh wow, it's like two dope worlds kind of
Right.
coming together, man. We've seen that a little bit with Lil Uzi Vert, right, coming out of Philly as well. But for you in particular, man, just where does that motivation and inspiration come from?
I love clothes, man. I used to have really long hair, which was like way down my back.
Okay.
And for me, every day was like a canvas that I got to paint. Some days I felt like wearing a basketball jersey and some shorts. Some days I felt like wearing really tight pants and a patent leather rain jacket. Some days I felt like wearing knee-high boots. I love to switch it up because I feel like that's clothes make me feel confident. And sometimes I'm in different moods. So sometimes I dress this way, sometimes I dress that way. But one thing's for sure and two things for certain is that I'm gonna always look good because I love playing with clothing, and I think that's one of the freedoms that people just don't all the time give themselves the liberty. Everyone kind of like finds their niche and sticks with it, which is cool. But there's so many things in this world that make this world beautiful, and I'm ready to try them all out.
Yo, Julie, and let me just kind of touching up on that point because, and it breaks my heart that James Harden has, demanded this trade. Now he's in Philadelphia, but he, like himself, little baby. We see a lot of artists that Russell Westbrook too that love to kind of push that boundary and say, I'm making fashion statements. It feels more than ever these past few years, especially right now. Fashion statements being made, and it's so unapologetic. It's like if you don't get it, then you just don't get it. Keep it moving, and I just love that. And every genre too. It's not just R&B and hip hop. It's the rock stars, it's the country stars. Everyone's Lil Nas X, so on and so on. So yes, and Julian King, of course. Talk about it, man. Just talk about is it exciting fashion? Like let's just compare fashion a few years ago, like 2019, when the day came out, to where it is right now. Do you feel like there's even more crazier and exciting fashion statements you want to make?
I definitely think that there's more to my repertoire. I think as I continue to grow and I continue to be exposed to new cultural experiences and people and places and things, that I will continue to pull. I remember when I lived in China for a year, and next thing I know, I'm pulling from this and that and this and that.
Sure.
That's the part that I love about fashion. It can be temporary, it can be permanent, it can be experimental, it can be influential, and I want to be a part of that conversation later in my life. I hope to have a line of my own, and I hope to be able to inspire others to just continue to live with that authentic, like what you want to wear when you first wake up is usually who you are and how you feel, and
Yeah.
exude that. I love that.
Yo, I love it. Wait, I'm so apologetic because I had no idea about the China background, man. So was that just like, oh man, I want some like Chinese food in Philly from Chinatown is not enough. I need to go to China for some Chinese food, or just like without getting too deep into it, was that like family related, business related, personal related?
No. So I at the time, long story short, I had like just broken up with my boyfriend. I fired my last team. I let go of my job. My lease was up. It was given one of those like life moments.
Get out of here. Yep.
I got presented with the opportunity, and I was like, you know what? Shit, let's do it. And I did it. And the first few months were a little crazy, but by the time I left, I didn't even want to leave.
Guys, yo, how's the Philly cheesesteak in China, man? Like, yo, can they throw down on a cheesesteak? No.
Mm. And even if they did, I'm not trying.
Got you, guys. And let me just ask you, because in this world, so many people are changing their diets and what they're eating. Are we still? Is it like Philly cheesesteak to the day it's RIP, or are you like trying to feed off of the Philly cheesesteaks? I feel like being from Philly, you have to, even if you're a vegan, you have to allow that in your life.
It's interesting because being from Philadelphia, I don't say that cheesesteaks are a part of my every week diet. Okay. Cheesesteaks one of those things like, damn, I'm in the mood for a steak. All right, let's go. It's not really like, oh, I gotta have one every weekend. You know what I mean? And I'm not on any particular diet. I try to watch what I eat just so that I'm not like getting fat. Especially with me having to dance and perform and like move in my everyday. But I like to eat. And one of the things that I love about my city is that we got good eats here. For sure.
Gotcha. How does it rank to New York? Because like we're such close proximity, right? And I know Philly, we just can't touch the cheesesteaks out here. You know, we do have the pizza, and I know the cheesecakes out there are amazing as well.
Mhm.
You know, and so on and so on. But just food wise, man, have you come to like appreciate what New York brings, or is it like Philly's always gonna be the one and only, everyone else is secondary? Hmm.
Nah, I'm never one of those Philly is the one and only. Like
Okay.
I love Philly because Philly's home, but there's things that I love about Houston that Philly will never be able to do. There's things that I love about Miami that Philly just might not be able to touch. And there's things that I love about Italy that Philly just probably will never be able to touch. And that's okay because there's a huge
Yeah.
world and there's so much food out here to try. There's so many different cultural experiences and geographical differences that make the food different and worth the travel. I'm a world traveler. I love to travel. So any excuse to go to New York or Miami or Italy or China or Punta Cana, I'm down.
Gotcha. And just to kind of backpedal for a quick second, now my mind's getting blown because I'm realizing, I'm looking at my little notes I got all over the place. Made in China, was that literally made in China, man? Yo,
Uh,
2019?
yeah, the beginning of Made in China was definitely Made in China.
Wow.
I called it Made in China just because of who I felt like I was when I came back to America. Was just a different Julian. I turned 25 over there, and I was living in China. Like you can't get any more wilder than that. And I felt like who I was really, there I kind of thought about like what I really wanted, who I really was, what kind of music I really wanted to like put out into the world. And that's why I called it Made in China.
That's crazy.
Which
That's crazy.
I thought that was kind of fire because everything in America is made in China. No shit.
That is true. No, and then like I said, I don't know why I didn't make that immediate connection when you talked about China because I had that to bring up. Yo, and then of course, 2020 we got Takeout, which also kind of feels like a Chinese food reference, man, in a weird.
Yes. So I really wanted at the time Made in China. I had just dropped it. I had just gotten off The Voice.
Okay.
She was really picking up. My last concert, Brandy came and she was sitting front row, and Jay-Z's music director was working for me at the time. It was just like a wild time. Like things were really going great, and then the pandemic hit. So I released Takeout, which includes like 5 remixes and like 2 or 3
Yes.
new songs, just as like a thank you to everyone who had like really rocked with Made in China, who are still rocking with me throughout the year. Um, but I didn't want to quite release like a new project. I just wanted to kind of, Made in China had just dropped and then the pandemic hit. So I wanted to kind of just revisit, revamp, refresh, and more so just like a thank you. I released a documentary as well, kind of just like talking about the records and where I was at that time in my life. And I'm grateful for that time because I got to introduce the world to just a different side of Julian.
For
Uh,
sure.
and I can even tell the difference in maturity from Made in China and Takeout. But the difference between Takeout and this new project,
Crazy. Got you. No, and you know what? That was actually kind of to piggyback on what you were just mentioning there. I wanted to ask you, and actually it's more of a two-parter, so we'll focus on the first part first, which is how did like quarantine and the pandemic change the music making? Because I think we all, myself included, went through a lot of different transformations, right? There was like, okay, what is this quarantine lifestyle like? And all right, at first you're gonna like watch a few things on Netflix, then you finish the Netflix library, and then I'm gonna be productive, but then it's like kind of draining on you. And so like it was a bunch of different emotions. So you being a musician, you like you said, it was so many great things happening right then, and then the pandemic just for everybody put life on pause. Just without revisiting that every detail, but just talk about just that evolution where you're able to overcome it and push forward. Kind of what was that like for you?
interesting. No shade. The first few months, I didn't do shit.
Yep.
Like I there were times, bro, where I was just like, yo, I do not give a fuck. Like I'm not doing this. The world
Yes.
is ending, and I'm not gonna try to like push to be this thing and do this thing if it doesn't come organically. I then taught myself how to record in Pro Tools, and that changed the game because
Nice.
I'm not a big person who likes to have a lot of people in my studio sessions at all.
Mhm.
I'm okay with my manager or assistant at the time, my engineer at the time, and myself, and like maybe a writer, but like I don't like a lot of people in my space when I'm in this process. So
Yeah.
being able to shut my door and like be by myself, it really allowed me to write from a different place. And I just started like writing whatever came out. And it's so interesting because at the end of 2020, I ended up signing with the team that I have now, and they loved every record. And I'm like,
Everything.
this was just some shit I like, okay, let's dig into it. The pandemic really allowed me to realize one, my creative process and my writing process. Two, I've strengthened my recording process. And in many instances, even if I don't have an engineer, I'm still able to work, which is a blessing. And three, it really caused me to dig deeper than like what was just superficial. I don't believe that Made in China and Takeout were superficial at all. Takeout was actually the beginning of my like recording. I recorded everything on Takeout like in my room as well, but it was in the beginning phases. So like I still hadn't really had like a, on it.
Gotcha. Yep.
But now like I'm able to just really dive into the creative process without anybody around me and without any distractions. And it's really helped me a lot.
No, definitely, man. And I was just gonna say, I guess the part two, I got so warped into that answer, man, is just, with the music creating now, just kind of seeing how easy it is now that you know Pro Tools, man, and that you're able to create so much stuff on the fly. Have you been able to embrace like all that talent, and like even social media? Like I think like every platform has made it so it's easier to create content. It's easier to go viral. There's so many more opportunities now, and it seems like even the social media platforms during quarantine came up with some dope content creations. Are you finding it, versus 2019, Made in China, Takeout versus what you're creating now? Obviously, the feedback you've already received from Can We Go Back? This is kind of that transition, man. Is it more exciting? Is it more nerve-wracking?
I think the process is a lot easier because I spent a lot of the time by myself.
Yeah.
Really taking the time to work through the kinks of my personal process. So now, like, I just spent the last 2 weeks in Los Angeles recording, and it's coming like this now.
Nice.
This is Miyake.
Yes. Oh my, we even got like Asian names. It's so dope.
It's a Japanese city.
Miyagi, yes. Oh my gosh, look at that.
He's
That is
amazing.
adorable. Adorable. Are we like team dogs or team cats or just animals?
We're team animals. Like, I'm a huge animal lover. I've had cats and dogs.
Okay.
I enjoy the
Miyagi.
companionship more of dogs and like their willingness to go the distance, if that makes sense.
For sure.
I also love the ease and sleaze of a cat. Like,
That is true.
like, and I have my extroverted moments where I'm being puppy, and then I have my very introverted moments where it's very much like cat can't even find them in the house.
Yes. I feel like Miyagi's pretty much being the manager right now, reminding me, yo, sorry, she said 15 minutes, right? So I would just go one or two quick things, then I'll probably wrap up. And honestly, Julian, man, I was gonna say after the recording, but please, I want to reconnect with you as these, I know Hollywood Life had to get the inside scoop, and we're able to premiere Can We Go Back? But since we made this connection, the team is amazing. They're keeping me updated on all the amazing grinding you're doing every step of the way, even if it's like, something that you just want to like shoot off to social media and maybe it goes viral or whatnot. I want to make sure we are keeping tabs on tacticculture.com.
Let's do it.
So we got it. I will definitely cut you loose, but just on a final note, I really want to ask you this a little bit towards the beginning of the conversation. Where's your second home? You mentioned LA. I know you run a gun in New York and China, but where would you actually consider your second home, man, outside of Philly?
That's interesting because I really kind of felt like it was Los Angeles. I spent a lot of time there. When I got back from China, when I filmed The Voice, after The Voice, I'm recording in Los Angeles. I'm filming in Los Angeles. Like, it feels like that's a second home, but honestly, Atlanta is starting to feel like a second home too. My family just, over the past 2 years, a lot of my family moved down there. I got a bunch of friends down there, and I like the Southern hospitality.
For sure, sure. And we're just gonna overlook New York, even though we're like a few
No,
miles
I mean I'm in New York a lot,
I
but
feel you. I feel you.
I don't know that I could live in New York. It's just not. Well, one, I enjoy having my car. I worked really hard to save up to buy this car, and the thought of like everyone's like, oh, you can just go to Brooklyn or Harlem and you'll find parking. No, it's not.
No way.
It's
But
not
you know,
that
yo,
easy.
Julian, spoiler alert, everybody lives in New Jersey, Loki, Cardi B, Tracy Morgan. So we all like live in Jersey, like 5 minutes outside of the city, and then we all like have the lifestyle out there. So there
Right.
are ways, but no, I feel you in LA. Oh my God, this is why these go like 45 minutes. Now I just want to talk LA. So for part two, Julian, just put in the back of your head, we're going to talk about LA lifestyle. I got to ask if you've discovered the amazingness of Susie Cakes. Have you discovered Susie Cakes in LA?
I have not. You just put me on though. I'm about to be there in 2 weeks, so you just put me
Okay,
on.
I would love to do like when you get a moment outside the studio, and you can like reconnect. I can like live in the moment. Like you gotta go to there's Pink's Hot Dogs, but there's another low key spot, and one of my homegirls told me about it, and I can't think of it right now. But Susie Cakes, there's a few spots you gotta make time out to just go. Susie Cakes, you can even name drop Cyrus at the LA one on Melrose, and they were like, oh, okay, you're good.
Perfect.
Got you. So we will pick up on that, Julian. I cannot think. Wait one second, Julian. Let me.